If you became homeless right now, what would you do? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Lul. I was left homeless in 2022. First 2 days slept in a park. I was 22 at the time. Decided this wasn't my life and went to an emergency shelter. I had lost my job, so was broke, and my phone was smashed. Quickly started posting cleaning services on Gumtree from the local library. Spent most of my time there to keep warm. Managed to make a couple of hundred a week. Did some other outlandish, questionable things as well. Was placed in an emergency hostel about 1.5 months later. Got a job and rebuilt my life. Happens to the best of us. But now I'm 25 and feel untouchable. It built character. Edit. To the people messaging me asking if the outlandish stuff I did was work and saying some really weird, questionable stuff, no, it wasn't. There are many ways you can earn money that doesn't have anything to do with sexual activities. And I'm not judging anyone that does, as do what you have to do. Nothing I did harmed anyone or was of any illegal activity. To all the people that commented, thank you so much. It does mean a lot to be heard, and if any of you are in similar situations to where I was, feel more than free to drop me a message if you're looking for someone to talk to. Story 2. Get a job, any job. Nothing is beneath me. Sleep in my car until I have enough to get a new place. Ask friends and family if I can shower at their place. Edit. Why is everyone giving me all their hypotheticals? The OP asked simply what we would do in that situation. I stated the first 3 things that came to my mind. I don't need everyone's what-ifs. Story 3. I do a lot of work with housing and homelessness. I hear similar ideas a lot. And I've often asked people to do the thought experiment of being homeless and walking them through the realities. Get a job, any job. Nothing is beneath me. Seems like an obvious first place to start. However, there's some realities to take into consideration. You do not have an address. The vast majority of large companies will simply flag that and not even consider your application. Even most small companies wouldn't. Let's say you have a friend's address to use. Next, you need some way of them getting a hold of you. So a smartphone. Note, if you ever see anyone complaining about homeless people having a smartphone, they do not understand homelessness. Depending on your situation, this might just be usable with free Wi-Fi, so phone calls might be out. Let's say everything lines up and you get that interview. You need to make sure you are showered, look good, and have decent clothes. Not impossible, but also consider that each day you are needing to find a way to eat. The list goes on and on. As an example, you're listing a car and friends and family to support you. Most don't have that. The job market is essentially set up to ensure you don't hire someone who is homeless. Even in a situation like this, where you have a car and friends and family to give you access to showers, it's difficult. Most homeless don't have that. Also, any company that uses recruiters, even retail jobs do, have systems designed to figure out if you're homeless and flag the application. Edit. Why is everyone giving me all their hypotheticals? The OP asked simply what we would do in that situation. I stated the first 3 things that came to my mind. I don't need everyone's what-ifs. Mainly people are responding this way because what you stated is like when some dude at a bar tells you how he'd win a fight with a bear, but you're also sitting in a room with people who have fought bears or work with people who fight bears for a living, and they are telling you your foolproof plan to fight a bear isn't based in reality. Story 4. I once helped a young man to get into a normal life again. During my time as a bookseller, we accepted him as an intern. He turned out to be a very fine, friendly, and decent fellow, being very grateful for the chance. Upon being asked what's important if you're homeless, he answered, shoes, good ones. So I'd buy the best gear I can afford and look for some friendly bookseller. Story 5. Honestly, I'd probably panic at first, but I guess I'd try to find a safe place to sleep, maybe a shelter or somewhere public but not sketchy. Food would be next, soup kitchens or food banks. I'd look for any kind of work, even just to get a little cash. Staying clean would be a big thing too, just to feel human and have a shot at finding a job. Story 6. Make sure I signed up for SNAP and GA. Make sure I had a solid sleeping bag, a comfortable backpack, a PF Black card, and a fully loaded transit card. Not a hypothetical, this was my life for years. Story 7. I've been homeless before. Here's what I've done to ensure it never happens again. My vehicle is paid outright, as is my camper. I keep a tote with about 3 weeks worth of food provisions, and I keep the propane tanks full. So even if I were to suddenly lose my home, I have shelter, food, and a bed. I could shower in it, but I'd rather use the propane for heat and cooking than hot water. If I had to start over from scratch with nothing but my vehicle, I'd get a job. Any job. Anything is better than nothing. End of shift, use the bathroom for whatever hygiene cleanliness I can. Spare time spent in the library. This is both to keep warm, keep entertained, and maybe build up skills for better lay. Get a cheap gym membership ASAP. Real showers are a godsend. If you're homeless, you need to at least be presentable so you don't look homeless. Another thing is some way to cook. There's some cheap stoves at Walmart. First, Walmart, upgrading sleeping arrangement. Whether that's a sleeping pad, better sleeping bag, an air mattress, and actual sheets, whatever. Better rest, and if I haven't already, that gym membership. Then it's a matter of saving up for an apartment or some form of shelter. Roommates at a house, splitting an apartment, cheap camper. Securing some extra food, some form of entertainment, and then rebuilding my life. If it were a matter of I lost everything, then priority is finding shelter, homeless shelter, church shelter, a couch, anything. A backpack to live out of, then employment, then a car. Story 8. A lot of variables aren't covered here. Do I still have my job, my car, my bank account? Is it like a house fire thrown out of your home? Do I literally have nothing but what I have on my person? Most situations aren't great, but not complete losses. If it's a no money, no car, no job, out on the street situation, then that becomes a long-term survival scenario, which also comes with its unique challenges. But once again, not impossible. First things first, get somewhere I can make a fire, as it is going to be cold when the sun goes down, get access to water, then make a plan to get moving. Story 9. With the family culture I come from, it would be hard to be homeless. We take care of each other. I've housed my cousin before, as well as other friends and acquaintances in various transitional times. My mom and dad's house is always open to company, including family who were struggling with mental health for years, as well as me and my husband, at times between jobs and houses, and my brother and his husband in pandemic. I know my husband's family take care of their own too, and we can always call on them also. This kind of family infrastructure is precious. The basic financial stability of the family as a whole, invaluable. The health of the relationships in our family may be the most special piece of all. Not everyone has this. I know how lucky I am. I can only imagine getting turned away if I was bringing active addiction or a more violent brand of mental illness than we've dealt with already. And if that were my situation, I hope they would point me towards help rather than take me in. Story 10 depends how broke I am, but been there. Sleep in my car, make sure I get a membership to a 24/7 gym for showers, start gigs for quick cash, or steal something from a store I can sell it, repeat until I have enough to find a product I can scale legally. Story 11. The amount of people who are commenting suicide is concerning. I would do what someone with nothing to lose would do. Fight the system, make myself heard day in, day out. I think it's a real possibility for a lot of people, and we have to fight for change. Story 12. I'd also call my mom, LOL, but assuming that weren't an option, I'd find other friends willing to put me up for a little bit. I'd work and save some money to find a place with roommates that I could afford. Use food banks for the time being. I don't think it would be terribly hard to get back on my feet. I actually work with the homeless population, and it's both really frustrating and eye-opening. On the one hand, it's really irritating to watch people burn all their bridges and make poor choices rather than helping themselves. Sometimes they're entitled with little sense of personal responsibility. At the same time, a lot of these people have been through unimaginable trauma and are mentally or physically ill and just don't have the same coping skills as the rest of us and really do need help to survive. Story 13. I know if I were homeless, I would try to be as low profile as I could possibly be. I would find a place away from sight as much as possible. Little background, I was very close to homeless back in the mid-90s, so I understand how easy it can happen and how mentally hard it is to adjust your thinking. One bit of advice I can give someone that sees homelessness on their horizon: stop throwing your money away on rent and keeping up the facade if you can see it's not going to last. Take that money and buy a storage unit and start putting things that matter to you in there. And pay a few months in advance. Too many people wait until the sheriff comes with that 3 days quit letter before they take action. By then it's too late. Story 14. Depends if I sold it or was forced out at gunpoint or something, but probably kill myself. I lived a pretty sad life just so I can pay off my house ASAP, as I foresaw what is happening now. I feared a massive bank calling of all mortgages to force everyone to pay off their mortgages in 30 days or lose their property. So I suffered and paid mine off so I can weather the current crazy climate. To lose it after all that, too devastating to go on. I am old and lived a good enough life to go out now. Story 15. After everything goes to hell, job, money, the flashy life all gone in an instant, I end up living in my car, eating fast food from the dollar menu, and realizing I've got nothing left. I try reaching out to the friends who used to hype me up when I was on top, but now, not a bloody peep. Turns out, when you're no longer useful to anyone, you're just another guy in a parking lot with a sad story. That's when Tommy Shelby walks in, of all people. He doesn't ask for the sob story. He just looks at me like I'm the biggest fool he's ever seen and says, "Get up! Nobody's gonna hand you a thing. You want out of this? You get smart. He lets me crash at the Shelby estate, but not for comfort, more like a boot camp for the soul. Tommy teaches me that if you want to survive, you have to stop playing the victim and start playing the game. No more fake posts or trying to be someone I'm not. I get down to business with a little more grit and a lot less ego. By the end, I'm not just back in the fucking game, I'm running it. And Tommy, he just watches, barely acknowledging it, like he knew all along I had it in me. Story 16. I could stay with cousins for a while. After that, maybe I would try to steal enough of something to count as grand theft so that I might have a cell and food. Just read that some elderly Japanese women are committing crimes so they can get prison housing. Story 17. We lost power 3 days ago. It's 10 degrees in my house. My brain doesn't let me move around my house because it's so cold. I think about the homeless and what I would do. I don't have an answer because I'm frozen. Story 18. You have to treat it sort of like a wilderness survival scenario. Therefore, your first priorities are immediate survival. That means securing sources of food, water, and shelter. Do not take survival for granted. Death is an actual possibility when you're homeless, especially in winter. Call for help. In the wilderness, that means using a cell phone to call rescuers, building signal fires if helicopters or aircraft are nearby, etc. In this case, that means reaching out to friends, family, or aid agencies, such as charities or government social services. Only after these 2 steps can you think about larger issues of recovery, like finding a job. Story 19. If I ever become homeless right now, I would prioritize immediate safety and basic needs. Seek local shelters or outreach programs. Use resources like 211 in the U.S. or similar services in my area. Visit food banks, soup kitchens, or community centers for meals. 3. Contact organizations like Salvation Army, Red Cross, or local charities for assistance. Keep ID, Social Security card, and other important documents safe. Reach out to social services for housing programs, job assistance, or financial aid. Stay connected with community resources and support networks. Story 20. I'd panic at first, might even relapse and do some drugs, but I'd end up calling friends and family and starting to brainstorm solutions. I would not make it out on the streets, especially in our winters, LOL. Story 21. This assumes I still have a few bucks to my name, just not enough to pay for housing. Get a subscription to a local gym so I have a place to shower. Finally get a library card so I have a place to sit and get job applications and paperwork done. Get a cheap storage box so the couple of things I must keep don't get stolen. Get a P.O. box so I can still receive mail. Get a haircut ASAP so I'm presentable for as long as possible. Then, assuming I don't have a job, look for anything I can do to make a buck. Also dig in every social services and help I can possibly get. If there's some kind of advocate service available to help me navigate it, I look at that first. I grew up poor and now I'm in a better place, but don't want to go back to that. I have like 12 layers of backup plans before I end up in the street. Story 22. Find any job even if it's kind of crappy. Can't afford to be like, oh, that's too hard or lame. Work Burger King or McDonald's if I have to. Save up that money until I have enough to go in with someone at a rental and keep saving till I have enough to get a house and pay mortgage. Use the resources I have provided to me, such as food pantries and churches, to get by for food and such. Stay indoors as much as possible. Main thing would be to work. And no, there's no such thing as there not being work. There's always work somewhere. You just may not enjoy it. Plenty of high-paying factory jobs begging for workers. Story 23. Assuming I still have my savings, WFH job car and future retirement income streams, pension 401k and SSI. I would buy a big box of baby wipes to stay fresh when I couldn't shower, get a cheap gym membership, try to camp out in my car, use my work-issued laptop at a coffee shop or library or my cell phone hotspot, start saving to get into an apartment the next county over. If, on the other hand, I was destitute, I would try to make it one state over to my mom or sister's house. Meanwhile, I have a few friends who offered shelter during LA fires. I'd see if they would let me park in their driveway assuming I still had a car, or sleep on the couch till I could get it together. I have a medical condition that would qualify me for disability benefits, and I'd start that ball rolling before I lost my mind. Story 24. So I'm making some assumptions here to really qualify for what would be deemed homeless. My home is gone and my net worth is now $0. I cannot move in with family. I have no job. I also have lost my recruitability for a similar job and pay rate. I have no credit. So, with all of that established, here's my list of plans. I live in NYC, so I'd probably sign up for emergency assistance. One-shot deal. That should provide me a safety net while I try to get back on my feet. I'd get busy looking for work immediately. My first stop would be looking for work as a file clerk in some big law firms. It pays decent for the lack of schooling requirements. The key is just having attention to detail and being organized. No one is going to rent to someone without any credit without getting first and last up front. So I'm going to need to find a way to stay healthy, warm, clean, and presentable until I can find a home. So I would buy a gym membership and a lock and use it for its restrooms, showers, saunas, and equipment. I will especially need to show up there first thing in the morning to get cleaned up for work. Thrift shop for presentable clothing. Nothing needs to be expensive, but I need to have several slacks, shirts, underwear, and jackets. Being presentable will be key to keeping a job as a file clerk. So I will need to make sure I have a way to keep clean clothes separate from used. Probably see if I can find cheap backpacks as well to keep things safe. Sleeping is an issue, a big one in NYC. It's expensive to stay anywhere, but the key is finding a safe, warm, dry, clean place to get some shut-eye. Shelters are an option, but they fill up fast. And TBH, I'd feel bad taking a bed away from a kid who needs it more. So I'd probably look elsewhere. Subways are a last choice option. You can ride them all night, but you do run the risk of being targeted by nefarious peoples. I'd probably go by a few churches and ask politely if they will let me lay in a pew for a few hours. Basically, I would appeal to people's reasonable natures to try and find a spot for a night or a few nights. Once I start receiving pay, either from assistance or from work, I would rent cheap hotel rooms until I could afford to rent an apartment. And once I rent an apartment, I would no longer be homeless. So this thought exercise is now complete. Story 25, do I have a car? Do I have a credit score and maybe some savings to obtain a car? A used car. Is this the best answer? Not truly, but neither is being homeless. Look for the highest calorie-dense snacks at Dollar Tree. A backpack, phone charger, cheap phone. What items do I have that I can safely sell? Get a cheap gym membership for shower access, but don't overuse it so to not be denied after some time. Has happened to some. Call local church or start Googling homeless resources in my area. XOXO. Story 26:1. Try to find a Sikh temple. They will feed anyone, no questions asked. I bet they'd let you sleep in the temple if you asked politely, or at the very least help you find shelter. 2. Ask anyone at the temple if they know of any work I could pick up. They have a lot of community spirit, and I'm sure they know a guy that knows a guy that needs help with something. 3. Get a library card. They are free or next to free in most libraries to have access to the internet and books. Surviving is one thing, but it's important to take care of our mentality, healthy in hard times, so books can become a great source of entertainment and help. 4. Using your internet access, try to find a cheap bedroom not too far from your new place of work so you can walk, take the bus if you can. The streets are tough, but humans are tougher. Learn humility in order to lower your expectations of what you need while staying consistent, and you'll learn to thrive in whatever environment. Edit format. Story 27, too vague. We need details. Are we talking as if everything about our lives is the same, but our house disappears essentially? In that case, drive to a store and get thick-ass blankets. My job has showers I can use, so other than losing every important possession, I guess I'm fine for a bit, but apartment hunt ASAP. Not much else. I have the money, I have the job, and every other important thing. If you mean no job, no car, no family to rely on, IDK, I guess I'll die in a ditch or something. I've worked with homeless to help get them in better situations before, and it is not easy, even with help. This is also why that one billionaire kid who did a social experiment pretending to be poor and make his money back was bullshit. If you have the extra a person with a steady job and help has, it's simple, but expensive. If you don't, it's hell. Story 28. Realistically, probably just check out if you catch my drift. There's a pier at the end of my town. It's not terribly deep water, but freezing temps and a good bump on the head will get the job done. I've been a burden on my family enough while trying to stay sober. If I lost everything and ended up in the situation, I'd rather die than burden them again. Story 29. Assuming nobody could take me in, I would go to a shelter, hopefully a women's shelter. Those places can be dangerous, but it is very cold ATM. Next morning, I would go to the unemployment office to find anything. Then a library to find resources available to me. Seriously, librarians know everything or how to figure it out. Here's the problem. I don't have many of the problems that people end up homeless have. I have a support system, reasonable health, no substance or addiction issues, good education and savings. If I became truly homeless, some of these things would have to change drastically, and I would likely not be able to manage my health concerns, so I would likely struggle to stay alive. Story 30. Please, if you do not have at least 2 people you could call in an emergency, start developing those relationships. It's hard. Some people that might include your family. If you are the one, be honest with yourself and start fixing that. You have to reach out of your comfort zone. Be willing to have people say no. But ask the person you see routinely to go to dinner or a movie. Get involved in meetups, join a church or synagogue or other religious community. Just check it's not a cult. Offer help when you know there is a need, but don't get dragged into a one-sided relationship. Especially, don't let someone who you don't know well and don't know if they pay their own way in life to move in with you. For me, first I would go live with my daughter. She has a spare room and we have a good relationship. She could use my rent money and help with projects. If that didn't work, go live with my sister and her husband. She has several spare rooms and multiple bathrooms, so that would be more comfortable. We have a good relationship and are both reasonable people. It would be fine until I figured out a permanent plan. If that didn't work, I could spend a couple nights on my son's couch. We have a good relationship, but his place is very small. After that, I have at least 3 friends, 2 nieces, several cousins who would be happy to have me. We have good relationships and have been mutually supportive of each other. I haven't burnt any bridges with a long list of other acquaintances, and I always pay my own way. I would be able to crash somewhere for a few days until I could make a long-term plan. Story 31, I think a lot depends on if anything in my current house survived. I have a truck and trailer, plenty of tools, plenty of guns and ammo, tents and emergency food for a month, and just about everything you'd need to live off-grid for months. I don't have seeds, come to think of it, but I have plenty of emergency fund money and good credit. I could just rent an apartment, I guess. Story 32, I would try to start a business. Starting small, for example, trading my possessions for better things and selling them and repeating the process. I would also try to contact my family by asking strangers. I'd go to restaurants towards the end of the day and ask them for the food they didn't sell that day. I would try to expand my small, tiny business until I finally make some revenue/profit. Story 33, friend's place maybe. He's got a basement and all his kids are either in college or already graduated. It's a long drive from work, but we work at the same place, Lowell. Or motel for a few nights while I apartment hunt. If your question requires that I lose my job, then I'd first check one of my friends who's trying to start up a defense contracting company. If that doesn't work out, simply fly back to my parents for a while. Story 34. Leaves a bit of headroom. Homeless with or without a job. Homeless with or without a car. Some money or none. Anything to sell? Debt? I think one of the best options if you're still eligible for a bank account is getting a gym membership, so you can shower and/or be in a warm space during opening hours for actually very little money. Maybe some storage compartment to store clothes. Where I live now, both is possible for €70/month combined income tax, so that clothes to change and a shower would help with either keeping or getting a job. Not sure about sleeping. Story 35. The honest answer for me is that I'm extremely fortunate and have well-off family I'd move in with, but I'd be pushing to leave and not overstay their hospitality. I figure my parents or brother would let me stay there for quite a while, though. If not, I'd have to sort out how to live in my car and get a gym membership for showers. Immediately start applying to all available jobs, literally any kind of job. Story 36. I'll never be homeless so long as my parents, either of my sisters, has a home, but I'm lucky enough to have a family where I can rely on that. If I didn't have them first, I'll get one of my friends to take my cats in for a while, since I can't take care of them if I can't house them and no shelters will let me bring them along. Then I'll see who of my friends group will be willing to let me stay with them for some time while I work whatever available job there is to get me back into housing and such. Thankfully, I have an amazing friend group who I can trust will be there for me. I've offered a struggling friend my spare room before, and thankfully, they ended up not needing to take me up on in. And I've had similar invitations from others when I was worried about not finding a place in time before I had to move out of my last apartment. There's nothing more valuable in life than having a loving and supporting blood or found family. Story 37. The only way for this to happen suddenly for me would be if my house burned down or there was a failure in the roof or something forcing us to move out. In that case, I'd move my family into a hotel and begin the insurance process. My home insurance provides coverage for hotels and sundries while I rebuild. I have an emergency fund and a couple lines of credit to cover other stuff if needed. It would be more of a hassle and annoyance than anything. If I lost my job, I could go for a year or more between the emergency fund and credit lines before I'd be at risk of missing mortgage payments. The odds of me going more than a month without work of some kind are slim to none due to my skill set and resume. Story 38. If I became homeless, so many things would also have to happen, and so I'm assuming that this means my city/region/country is suddenly dealing with a full-scale civil war, or similar, in which case I'm going to gang up with my huge extended family and fortify the family farm, and we're going to hope no tanks roll through. It's a good spot, though. I think heavy vehicles might never be deployed anywhere near it because of the landscape and how boggy it is, and we could generate a lot of our own power and clean water as well as food. It's the best I got. But if I just lost my house somehow, We'd liquidate some investments and downsize immediately. Story 39. Actually, if I couldn't mooch of my parents or siblings, I could 100% stay at my parents' house though. I have a friend who owns 50 acres of land and he's let random people camp on his land in exchange for farm work. So probably that, as he's actually done that for another friend who wasn't really homeless per se, he had a job, etc. But he had broken up with a long-time GF, and she was the financially smart one, and their apartment was in her name, etc. So he just camped out while figuring out what he wanted to do. Story 40. This is a TV show, movie trope cliche, but why not commit a petty crime and go to prison? Like take a piece of paper, draw a $100 bill on it, and try to buy gum with it. When the cashier says you're joking, right? You say, "No, I'm committing some sort of crime. Go ahead and call the cops." Then tell the cops you are counterfeiting money. Story 41 immediately. Crash with a friend. If I get to keep my car, that widens the options for who I can stay with. Long term, if I still had my job/health, I'd move in with a friend of mine who just kicked her BF out and help her cover bills. If I lost my job/health, I might move back in with my parents. I did it once before when I got divorced, stayed a year, then moved out. I'm privileged in that I'm healthy, employed, own a car, and have a number of friends with stable housing who would take me in and/or let me use their address to acquire services. I have parents who could loan me money. My mom co-signed my loan to get a new car when my ex took the one we shared. It would be stressful but not deadly. Story 42. I've been virtually homeless. Kind of still am. I'd accept that about 90% of my life is now going to thrift stores and prepare my van for living instead of leisure. I'd get a small safe for my emergency cash and get used to sleeping on a futon back seat. Could be worse. I'd get by. Homelessness changes you to nearly always be at least a little prepared for it. Story 43. I'm looking around my living space, wondering what I would bring with me. I have a dog, so I would have to take his food. But which clothes? Which mementos? And no idea where I would go to live. My car, I suppose. It's small, so I will have to pack well. Food for thought. Story 44. Hitchhike to a mountain town and live in the woods nearby. Keep a low profile and make friends quickly. Try to find used camping gear, maybe donations through networking, hence why I'm choosing a mountain town with a lot of outdoor activities. Try to line up a way to shower consistently and apply for food stamps. Find a job doing anything. Save to afford a room or a room share somewhere in town. I've done this before once upon a time. Story 45. Sell what I have left and get to a fishing crabbing boat. Hard work, long hours, but you get a place to sleep and food to eat while you're making money. Build yourself back up and figure out why you went homeless while on a boat watching the sun set over the ocean. Then don't make the same mistakes again. Story 46. It really depends on all of the other variables. Worst case scenario, I have nothing but the clothes on my back. It's about 7 p.m. and winter here. So basically I'm heading to any industrial areas and hunting down large quantities of cardboard and other materials in order to make a bash, basically some kind of hobo shelter, and I'm getting rest until morning. It's unlikely that I can do a hell of a lot right now, and I don't really want to risk too much. I can make much better progress during the day. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll go dumpster diving for food and any other resources. I know my city well enough to know where I can go that is discreet for the night. Tomorrow morning, it's straight to all of the homelessness services to see what help I can get. I'm not expecting to get a home, but knowing what's available is key. I'm less concerned about work at this point. It's largely pointless without access to banking. However, later on in the day, if I have the energy, I'll be hustling around places. Small cash or bits of fresh food for brief bits of work other people would rather not do. From there, it's keeping on with help and services for homeless people every day. Keep building up resources as well. Clothes to keep warm, spare clothes, a bag to carry stuff in, something to sleep in, a tent if needs be. Keep learning about where you can get away with holing up at night. What are the best dumpster food options? Where can you spend a couple of hours in the warm and dry? Where's good for begging? What are the threats and risks? Where is dangerous? What are the other options for making money? Would I shoplift? Absolutely. I would like it, but if it's necessary to survival, I'd do it. Story 47. Sleep in one of the unused rooms at the office, shower in the gym in one of the other buildings, eat at my desk. Anything else is gravy. I'm an 80s latchkey kid. I could have weathered the COVID lockdowns on cat food, Flintstones vitamins, and The Price is Right reruns for several more months before I'd scratch my head, look around, and wonder if everything is okay. Story 48. I have been homeless for a short time before in my early 20s. It sucks so bad. But you can make it decently comfortable depending on what kind of car you own. Back then, I owned a SUV, and I easily fit an air mattress in back, so I would probably have a similar setup. Black out all the windows, connect a battery bank for electronics, find a safe place to camp overnight, rinse and repeat. Take showers at the gym and keep active as much as possible during the day. Work as hard as possible to get off the streets or at the very least longer-term camping arrangements. Story 49. I am technically homeless. I live on a property my parents own and pay no rent. It won't last forever, though. They're only allowing me to do that because I'm taking care of one of my sister's abandoned kids. When she is ready to go elsewhere, I have to leave. Working on buying a van to live in. I've got a few months to fix it up and get it ready. We're expecting she'll leave this summer. So after that, I'll be living in a van. Plan is to do a lot of traveling and stop every few months to do some work and save money before moving along again. The nomad life sounds nice. I do currently have a job, always have. College graduate with a degree in biology. Was never able to find work in my field, so I've been managing restaurants my whole life. There's no money in it, barely any benefits. I went to the hospital without insurance and put myself in crazy debt because of it and ruined my credit. I'll never recover, never be able to buy a home of my own. I kind of just gave up. Story 50. If living with family, friends, or just using the money I make from my current job somehow isn't an option, finding a place tucked away to pitch a used tent, assuming shelters are all full, then it's finding any job to start getting enough money to afford a smartphone and phone plan and begin buying, selling things off of Facebook Marketplace until I make enough to afford a place to live again. You can even work your way as the middleman, haggling prices off items you know will sell and posting it for hire, and doing the exchange at the seller's house so you don't even need to buy it in the first place. Just take the buyer's money and pay the seller right then, netting whatever profit you can. Working minimum wage might be able to get there eventually depending on where you live. Sad reality, the use of the word might, but I'm trying to live outside as few days as possible here. Story 51. Put on my thick marmot coat that I got exactly for that event and hope that my decision paid off. I'm so tired of the ever-looming threat of homelessness that I stopped fighting it. And don't ask me how that's going. I don't exactly want to talk about my life circumstances currently. I'm dealing with dissociation and sleep coping, trying not to sabotage myself. Story 52. I lived in a motel for a year. Then my wife got stage 4 cancer, and after 3 months of being alone by myself in the room every day while she was in the hospital, she told me to go back to my parents, 650 miles away. So that's what I did. Life can you over even though you have done everything right. I don't know, man, it sucks. Story 53. Use savings for a hotel in some place that has drywall work for an experienced finisher. I have traveled thousands of kilometers to work and am good at sustaining reliable builders to keep feeding me work. If we're talking total market collapse and construction stops, I'll sell everything I don't need and go live in my trailer somewhere and figure out a new plan to survive. It really all depends on the circumstances. I have 3 kids full-time, and it would be a challenge, but not something that would break me, I hope. Story 54. Call the DV shelters. I escaped DV to live with my mother. It's been almost 2 years if I became homeless right now. That would have meant that my mother and stepfather kicked me out. And since they also had a history of abuse, I would call the DV shelters in my state or live in my car with the kids. There's a family of 9 that are homeless and living in their car. I became friends with them, saw how it all worked, and now I have a contingency plan in case everything goes belly up and hits the fan. Story 55. The responses are interesting because homeless encompasses a wide range of situations and circumstances. Are you penniless wandering the street? Do you have all your assets except for a permanent address? Still have your income? I've been homeless more than once and all these situations are worlds apart. Story 56. Been there, done that. If it happens again, at least I already know what to do. I survived on the streets during blizzards and heat. I am certain I could do it again, but I'll do everything in my power to avoid it as long as I'm not having to risk my future. If you do something illegal or deadly to avoid going homeless, then there is no recovering after. Story 57. Live in my truck that's essentially built to live in, haha. Honestly, getting laid off is one of my secret wishes, lol. I love my job and my team, but travel with my family will always hold my heart, and my job is the only thing holding us back from relocating to somewhere new and wondrous for us. Story 58. My if I have a car plan is to panhandle enough for a tank of gas and a Planet Fitness membership. Use that to shower and sleep in the parking lot, apply for a staff position. Once I have that, I have free access to water, showers, and a paycheck, then get a second job at Starbucks or another restaurant. 1 free meal a day, 2 paychecks, hopefully enough to save up for a place in a couple months. Story 59. Move into my minivan. It's going to be deja vu all over again because I was homeless for 19 months just before and during the pandemic. I have enough income to swing a storage unit, so I'd put as much of my stuff as I could in that and see if I could stack in a manner that would allow me to have a hidden office or sleep in if I had to. I have a big jackery with solar panels I could use to run my desktop for several hours at a time if I had to. I know a guy on the town council who owns property in town that has a bunch of abandoned warehouses on it, so I might be able to get him to let me park in one of them. I'd keep my laptop and mini PC in the van and would use the two jackeries for power and solar panels for recharging. I still have my propane cooking equipment and heater. I would be on a deadline because I have a cat, and I would have to find a housing solution before it started getting hot. I think building a trailer to town behind my van would be my best bet, something I could insulate and put an air conditioner on, and get extra solar panels and another LiFePO4 battery large enough to last a couple of days at a time without charging. There is no way I could afford an apartment. The one I have now is free. I pay the power bill. The owner of the apartment building supports what I do. I run a hyper-local news outlet where I record video of local government meetings and civic events and post them online, as well as report on public safety like traffic accidents and do the local weather, and has told me I can stay here indefinitely. I only make $1,600 a month from donations to my Patreon and PayPal. Rent in my area has become outrageous since the pandemic, and one-bedroom apartment that used to be $1 a month is now $2,000 a month. Story 60. Let's assume I became homeless because I lost a job, I have no money, and will ignore that my family exists. Obviously, food, water, and something resembling shelter comes first, but shouldn't take long. For food, I'd hang around the grocery store and ask for someone to buy me some necessities that I could keep without refrigeration. I say the grocery store because a burger from a fast food joint isn't going to do much good for long. If I strike out begging, I'll probably hit the dumpster behind the store. Water can be from a hose or fountain. No prob. Shelter will depend on the weather. A tarp and blankets would get me through most. If it's really cold, I might need to get my hands on a knife and find an area where I could have a fire without getting in trouble and build a little shelter. As soon as possible, hopefully before my clothes or myself are too shabby, I hit up every business within walking distance, explain my situation, and try to find some work. If I can string together a couple part-time gigs, I can probably get enough to hit up a thrift store for more clothes and a backpack and buy some food. Being on the street, it's easy to get your stuff stolen, so we'll stay minimal. If I get in well with an employer, I'd probably ask if there was someplace in a storage room or something like that where I could sleep between shifts. I actually did this when I lived in my car in college, and my boss was okay with me taking naps on the floor of the back office. From then on, it's just a matter of saving as much money as I can and staying employed long enough to find somebody who needs a roommate. Once I accomplish that, not homeless anymore. Keep working towards a more substantial income and rebuild. Story 61. Renting a small room in some old building, borrowing money for this and groceries if I don't have any, getting a job if I don't have any, asking friends and people around me for help if I can't find a job. I'm not from USA. Where I'm from, you can rent a room for dirt cheap if you lower your standards enough.